which I like to do all the crafts. I knit, I crochet, I sew, I quilt, I make baskets. I also like to make soap and jewelry and pretty much anything I can get my hands on. I am also a professor of physics and astronomy at a local university, so I love to talk about different interesting sciencey topics. And last but not least, I am a third-generation family farmer living here on my farm in the foothills of the Arkansas Ozarks, where I raise grass-fed beef cattle, I raise horses, and I am also a haven for several rescued donkeys, miniature horses, and a miniature mule who thinks she rules the roost. And if you can see here from my drowsy co-host, I am also fur kid mom to 14 dogs and 5 indoor cats, plus an undetermined number, which is apparently now quite large, of outside cats. And also I raise show quality rabbits and heritage poultry. So I'll talk about any and all of those things. So if you think you would enjoy hearing about that, please stick around. If you're a new viewer, welcome to the Funny Farm. If you're a returning viewer, thanks for stopping by again and visiting with me. I'm so tickled that you're here. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find my farm Facebook page is the same as my YouTube channel name, which is Buckthorn Farms. And then you can also find me on Instagram and on Ravelry as Doc Firewoman. There is a Ravelry group for this podcast. It's called Diary of a Physicist Farmgal, and you can go over there to check out different things, including some information about our charity make-along, which is going on. It will be ending in a little over a month on July the 2nd, where we are aiming to make things for charity. And charity is a pretty broad definition. You can go back and look at some of the other podcasts where I talk about that. But you can knit, you can crochet, you can sew, you can quilt. I don't care. Just let's make our communities a little bit better. You know, that whole rising tide lifts all boats things. This is my co-host Willie, and if you hear snuffling around in the background, I have a little bit more company this week, so let me introduce you. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, look who is back for another visit. It's Wally. You guys met Wally for the first time last week when I told a little story about him running through the fence and scaring me to death. He wanted to come in here today, so maybe he doesn't mind being on camera after all. So this is Wally. And I have another friend. Oops, there you go. Come here. Come here, little butt. Oh, I know it. Come here. Oh, come here. Oh, you're okay. Come here. Oh, goodness. Oh, big girl. This is Reyna. This is the little girl that I adopted with Wally. And she is probably part corgi and probably something black and tan. This is a fairly common coloration here in Arkansas of dogs. And she is my little girl that I adopt, or who sort of picked me out at the pet adoption that day with Wally. So she's not real sure about being up here on camera, so I'm going to let her down. But anyway, let me put her back down. Okay, it's okay. There you go. Okay, Willie, come on. I know you don't like to share your spotlight. Willie doesn't like to share his spotlight, and I don't blame him. So welcome back here for episode number 12 of Diary of a Physicist Farmgal. Okay guys, this week I'm going to show you my finished object. I only have one, but that's okay. I'm pretty tickled with it. This is my finished test knit for Vanessa, my friend, who also has the A Historian Knits podcast, and this is her first pattern. It is called the Ups and Down Socks, okay? And I finished them Saturday evening. She is going to have this pattern available, I believe, at the end of the month on Ravelry. Okay, it's got a really cool texture on it there. She asked me if I would test knit these, so I was very honored to be able to do that for her. And if you don't get the name, it's a reference to the movie Auntie Mame with Rosalind Russell, which was a 1950s era movie. It's one of our favorite movies. We've talked about it several times, she and I have. And in fact, I watched it 2 or 3 times while I was actually knitting these socks. So anyway, the movie, I like the movie because it has some interesting themes in it that I think we should still take to heart today. And the main idea in the movie is, the catchphrase is, live, live, live. Life is a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death. So I love that idea. So this is her first pattern, and she's going to have this available on Ravelry for purchase, I believe at the end of the month is the goal. These were knit out of a sock blank from Ballyhara Farms called Baby Elephant, okay? And it is a 75-25, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon sock blank. And yeah, so that means I get a bonus entry this month for the Grocery Girls because I did a pair of socks out of a sock blank. So I get a bonus entry for that. And then also I have entered these in a couple of different places. The Legacy Knits, Legacy Fiber Arts podcast is having a textured sock pattern, or textured sock knit along. So I entered them in that. And I also entered them in the Crocheting Hoovians socks, sock make along. And last but not least, of course, these will qualify for the box of socks that I'm making for the Yarngasm, Kristen from Volan Vine Yarns, her box of socks challenge. So this will qualify for those. So as soon as I get these taken off the blockers and sew up the hole that I'm covering up with my finger, I will put those in my box for my box of socks entries. So there you go. I'm very proud of those. I think they turned out wonderful. The pattern is very well written, very easy to follow. So once it becomes available, I will make sure to let you know, and you can check that out. So that is my only finished object for this week. Okay guys, as I move on into whips, I forgot to share this with you. I was crocheting those ups and down socks on my Lykke needles. And if you'll notice, the one looks a little strange. That's because Baxter, my dear sweet orange kitty, likes to chew on wood. And these are wood. And they were sticking out of my knitting bag, or this one was sticking out of my knitting bag. And he chewed the end of it off. He's also chewed a cable on my, of another pair of my circular needles, so I may have to buy him his own chew toys. There is a part of me that is so stingy that I'm going to sand that down and make it smooth again and use it, because that's just how I am. Anyway, so yeah, there's my poor little needles that did not survive the making of the ups and down socks. But anyway, moving swiftly on to my first work in progress here. In my Silver Shed USA Pretty Fox bag, I am working on, for the umpteenth time, the Mother's Gift MKAL. It's a mystery knit along by the Periscoping Sisters. Okay, it's a mystery knit along by the Periscoping Sisters. My pattern's kind of wadded up there because it's been in my project bag. They just released clue number 4. I'm about halfway through clue number 3. Clue number 4 looks fairly straightforward, so I believe I will have this done by the end of the week, or at least that is my goal. If you don't want to be spoiled, you can look away, but people have noticed have not been being super duper careful. So this is where I'm at. It's an interesting shape. It's a long sort of arrow shaped or pennant shaped shawl, it would seem. I'm working on a garter section, okay, and my yarns are all kind of tangled up there. Okay, so it's a long, skinny shawl. I think it's going to be really neat looking though. Okay, and I'm working on my last, my garter section. When I finish this garter section, there is an eyelet section, and then there's another garter section, and I don't know what's after that. I haven't looked for the last part of it. But anyway, so there you go. That is my Mother's Gift mystery knit along. I've mentioned the yarns a dozen times, but I'll say it one more time. It's Expression. The cream is Expressions Fiber Arts, and their pearlescent fingering, which is 50-50 superwash merino and silk. in the colorway Polar Bear because it does occasionally have little blue flecks in it. And then the blue is Primrose Yarn Company on their Adelaide base in the colorway Star Lord. Okay, so anyway, so I should have that done, I hope, for a finished object for next week because I'm starting the Rizza Knits Walk the Block Mystery Knit Along on June the 1st, and I'll talk more about that in future crafting. Okay, now some other works in progress. I'm very excited to show this because this is for one of my entries for the charity make-along. Now I'm going to stand up so you can see this. It is a lap quilt. I finished the top for one of the lap quilts. So there it is. Okay, and it is just a simple, oh, y'all see my house pants, aren't they sexy? Anyway, it is just a simple 9-patch block that I use some speed piecing techniques on, and then I set them together in such a way that they would sort of make a chain pattern. Okay, I think there's a name for that. I think it may be called Irish chain. I can't remember, but it's just a simple 9-patch that I've set together in an X shape. All right. These are going to, this one, and I've got another one started, are going to go into my charity make-along as entries for the local hospice house. They give lap quilts to all of their incoming patients, okay, as sort of a comfort for the patient while they're a resident at the hospice house facility. And then once they pass away, they go to the families. I have one that was my father's. He was a resident in that facility, and so I had been wanting to make these for a long time, and I actually started these out with the gifted and talented classes that I volunteer with, and they kind of fell by the wayside. So I decided the reason I'm having the charity make-along is to push me to finish these 2 quilt tops. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie these. I'm not going to actually quilt them. I haven't decided yet. But I think I'm just going to tie them with some embroidery floss, probably, and then that will be how I finish them off. And then I'll probably just bind them with some store quilt binding. We'll see. We'll see what I get up to. I've still got plenty of fabric that if I wanted to cut a binding, I could. So I may cut a bias binding. But anyway, I thought these were some pretty fabrics that I had chosen. But anyway, so I did finish one of my quilt tops, so I'm really proud of that. Okay. Now, another work in progress, and I have just barely gotten started on it. I showed this in Future Crafting, I think last time or maybe the time before, the little patchwork bear doll. Okay, he's one of those printed panels that I had mentioned. You see where I've started cutting stuff out. This is one of those VIP printed panels. Okay, and there's all his body pieces. I have started on his little coat. Okay, so I'm putting his little coat together. All right, and I've got some seaming to do, or some quilting, some sort of faux quilting to do on the outside of this. And I am loving these Wonder Clips, y'all. If you sew a lot, these are great. Now there are some applications where you still want to use pins, okay, but for holding stuff in place, man, these are the bomb diggity. I love these. So I found a box in like a little container of them. It has 100 in it for less than $10 on Amazon. So I highly recommend, if you sew a lot, getting you some of those Wonder Clips. So I got his little coat started, and then I hope to finish him. I'm actually going to work on him, I think, tonight, because I've had enough of outside for today. So I'll tell you more about that when we get to the farm section. Okay, so that's all the works in progress I was going to show for you today. So now let's talk about future crafting. Okay guys, so let's talk a little bit about some future crafting. I had mentioned Julia from the Happy Knitting podcast has just released her first sock pattern. It's called the Couch and Crackers Socks. I purchased the pattern while it was on the initial discount, and she is doing a knit along for those that runs through the end of June. So I am going to cast those on, and it's a very casual knit along. You just have to be working on them. There's only one thread. There's not a chatter thread and FO thread. She's just going to draw from the chatter thread. So you don't have to finish your socks to be eligible to win prizes. So I'm going to cast those on. Probably I'm going to wait. This week I want to get the Mother's Gift mystery shawl finished, and I want to do some sewing things this week. So I'm probably going to wait and not cast those on until the 1st of June, or after the 1st of June, so they will qualify for my June entry for the Grocery Girls sock bash. I haven't heard what the bonus entry is this month. I have no idea, so I'm just going to roll with what I've got. I'm going to use this instead. I shifted gears. I had shown a different yarn, but this is a yarn that I got from Craftsy. This is Cloudborne Fiber, and then this is their Merino Superwash sock, and the colorway is called Josh's Cat. Don't really know the reference, but okay. I thought it would show off the texture of that sock really well, and I like this thick sort of chunky woolly yarn. So I'm going to cast those on after the 1st of June. Okay, so that's one of my future projects. Willie, what you doing, bud? Jump down here. Okay, now I had mentioned a couple of times the Rizza Knits Walk the Block MKAL, and I have sort of been working on gathering up colors for that. She said anything between 3 and 12 different colors would work. I think the 12 comes from the fact that it's 4 weeks and you can use 3 different colors every week. So I have been going through my stash, because also the Happy Knitting Podcast with Julia is having a summer stash down. And so if you knit from stash, you can enter your finished objects for prizes. So I had showed these two last time, or shown these two last time. This is Kim Marie Knit-Knacks Area 51. And then this is Primrose Yarn Company Bird Set Free. And so I've been going through my stash looking to see what I had. Well, I have this yarn, which is a Cascade 220. Now, it is a sport weight, but I thought it would work okay with this fingering weight. It's just a Cascade 220 in the Periwinkle Blue. I had used this on my Jody shawl. And then Chicken Coop Dye Works had sent me a little mini skein as a gift when I had ordered some yarn from her. And it kind of picks up some of the colors in the Area 51 also. So I think I'm going to use those 4 together. I may add another one. I don't know yet, but we'll see. I was kind of playing around with this purple that I got from Tesla Knits that I have left over. It's sort of a micro striping purple. I don't know, so we'll see. I'm gonna go by the yarn shop probably later this week and see if I can't find. If I could find 6, then maybe I could mix and match them up together for that. So we'll see. But anyway, so that is the Rizza Knits Walk the Block MKAL. That pattern is available for pre-purchase. And you can go ahead and download the instructions and get ready. So yeah, so I'm going to do that. So that's another one of my future craftings. Okay, Willie, you don't need up there. I'm going to put you down a minute. Okay, I know. So, yeah, so those, I'm still muddling over my ideas on those, but that's kind of where I've settled at for the moment. Okay, so, now, some sewing future crafting that I want to do. I'll start with these quilt squares. Now, I have a quilt, and I made it when I lived in Oklahoma, so probably over 20 years ago. At the quilt shop, Patchwork Place, I took a class, and I made a twin-sized quilt with these blocks. Now, part of the blocks have the gold here and the blue. That's kind of a royal midnight blue there. Here, and then in part of the blocks, these two colors are reversed, okay? So it's pinwheels, it's a double pinwheel, and the quilt is actually hanging in my den, okay? I hang my quilts that I've made up and look at them instead of use them. So I've got it hanging in my den. But I have 3 of these blocks that I found left over. So what I thought I would do is make a table runner out of them and quilt it, okay? Or no, actually I have 4. I'll make a table runner out of them, and I don't know if I'm going to put them on point, like set them together so that they're like tip points are touching, like so. Like that, or if I'm just going to set them together in a traditional way. But I'm going to make a quilted table runner out of them as one of my entries for the county fair. So I want to use them up. I've had them sitting. They've just been sitting in in a tub with all my other fabric, and as I was going through my fabric earlier this year, kind of pulling things to decide what I was going to do for the fair, I found them, and I'm like, you know, you need to do something with those. So I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to enter those, or I'm going to make those up into a table runner, I think. Okay, now another item. Now this is another one of those printed panels. This is one, I believe my mother probably had this one. This is an example of some clothing you could make. Okay, this is a little pair of baby overalls. Now, I am going to make this up for the fair with the intention of giving it to my friend Denise for her little boy. He's due any second. She came out to the horse show on Saturday and is on the verge of popping. And so, but I thought if I made him in the 6-month size, enter them in the fair and then give them to her, because they are a Christmas pattern. If you'll notice the play on words on the name, it's Noah's Ark. And if you look at the animals on there, they all have Christmas items, okay? And the pattern or the fabric has Christmas things on it. So the idea is it's a Christmas themed little pair of overalls, okay? So I'm going to make those up to give to her as a gift. I've got to make her another baby gift. I'm going to make some of those burp claws that I showed a few episodes ago. But I'm going to make this up as a entry for the fair, but then I will give it to her for her little boy as a gift. Another panel that I found, and I don't know if these were mine or they were my mother's. I think these were probably mine. This is a vest. See if I can find the picture of it. I don't have a picture. Okay, well, this is a vest, but it is a Halloween vest. Now, used to, when I lived in Oklahoma, I had this thing where in October I wore a Halloween vest or shirt every single day in October. I don't know why I stopped doing that. I need to start doing it again because I have a lot of Halloween vests. So this is the back of it. Alright, this is the back of the vest. And then, let's see, fold it around here where you can see the front of it. Oh, here's a picture of it. I had it folded the wrong way. There's the picture of it. It's a square bottom vest, and then that's the fronts. So I'm going to make that for me as an entry for the fair, of course, but I'm going to also have it, and I'm going to try this year to do the Halloween every day in October, again, like I used to. So that's all my future crafting, but I found something as I was going through my stuff that I wanted to share with you. My mother and I were both cross stitchers, or I am still a cross stitcher, and she was a cross stitcher also. We used to subscribe to Cross Stitch magazine years ago, and I found some pieces that I had asked her if she would make for me for when I had my own home. I was still in graduate school, I think, then, or maybe even in college. Let's see, when did she finish these? She finished these in 1990, so I would have still been in college. And at that point, I was planning on getting married. That didn't happen. That's a story for another day. Anyway, she made me these 3 pieces because they kind of go together. Now, William will make you get down if you don't sit still. Okay? They are different panels with herb names on there, and they've got different color themes. I notice how this one's got a little stain on it. I'm going to have to try to get it out. Okay, so she made me these 3 panels, and the idea was I was going to frame them and have them hanging in my kitchen. So one of the things on my I really want to do this list is to renovate my kitchen, because it's in a terrible shape. It's never been renovated since the house was built. It's in a terrible shape, and when I do, I'm going to frame those and hang those in my kitchen. So I just wanted to share those with you guys since I had found them the other day when I was going through stuff. So that is all my crafting. I'm going to move on now and talk about acquisitions. If that is not of interest to you, thanks for coming and hanging out with me for a little bit. But if not, let's go on. Okay guys, last week I forgot to include the acquisitions section. I included the breaker for it, but then I forgot to actually put in the video. So I'm going to show you again my beautiful yarn that I made in the dyeing class with Logan from Leon Alexander Yarns. Okay, I signed up for it. I was one of the first people to sign up, and I got there and they organized the class in such a way that we were able to dye 2 skeins of yarn, one using a more of a kettle dyeing method and one using more of a speckling method. Okay, and so these are the 2 yarns that I did. This one, my inspiration picture for this one was a big thunderstorm picture, a big thunderhead, and so I used that as my inspiration for that. And then this one I just wanted to do a good old scientific Roy G. Biv rainbow. Okay, so yeah, so I'm pretty tickled with both of those. Alright, I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet, but I'm going to make them into something special. We'll see. Probably, I don't know, maybe socks, maybe, who knows, we'll see. I got time to think. So I had forgotten to include those last week, so I wanted to show them here. So I'm going to twist them up and then put them in my storage box now that I've shown them. So, okay. Some other things that I wanted to show, and these are things that I've had for a little bit, but I've been enjoying these fat quarter packs that you can get. These are a great way to come up with cute coordinating project bag material, I think. So I had bought a couple some time back. I was looking through my fabric stash and found them. I think this one is adorable. This is why I decided I wanted to share, because I like the flying kitty cats. Aren't those neat? I got 2 colorways of that. I got one on a dark background, and then this one is slightly different. This is more angel kitties on a lighter background. But I like them because, you know, there's a good size there to make a project bag. You know, you'd want to use it with some contrasting fabric probably, but luckily if you buy the quarter pack, you get fabric to do that with. So this one has got some interesting phrases on it. I like that share the love, feel the magic on there. Okay. And then this one says give gifts of love and kindness. So I thought that was really neat. So I'm going to put those together. And then the other 2 that came with it is just a stars and then sort of a swirlies pattern. So yeah, so I thought those were neat. So if you sometimes have issues, you know, finding coordinating fabrics, you can't usually go wrong with these little fat quarter bundles because they're usually picked out to be able to coordinate together. Another one that I have, and I guess I was on a cat mode that day, this one's got kitty cats on tree limbs or berry limbs. Okay, and then these are the coordinating fabrics for that. These are more folk arty looking. Okay, coordinating little fabrics for that. And then this one is more of a little miniature quilt panel with it, and I like the little folk art look of these. And then the last one is more of the little pastoral scene here. So okay, so again, little fat quarter packs like that are always nice to pick up because you can make all sorts of cute little project bags or little needle minders or notions pouches or whatever. And I'm one of those people that I'll try to use every scrap piece of fabric that I can come up with. I guess I inherit that from my grandmother. She would take a yard of fabric and cut out a whole dress from it. Now it wouldn't hang right because she didn't cut it on the grain or with the bias or whatever she was supposed to do. She just made it fit. But I think that that comes from the fact that both she and my grandfather, you know, they married right before the Great Depression started, and they were they were tenant farmers, and you made do or you did without. And so they were very much, you saved stuff, you reused stuff, you did not throw things away, and you could see that mindset even carrying over into her, you know, later years. You know, when they built the house that I live in, they didn't put a fireplace in it because that's what poor folks had to have. They had to have wood heat, and so they were not going to have wood heat. They were going to have, by gosh, central heat and air, because that's what, you know, the fancy folks had. And then they also put windows in it. These are those 1970s era diamond lattice windows that were real super heavy and were not made to be open and closed. So they did not put windows in it that were meant to be open and closed, because by gosh, they had to live in a house with no windows, or the windows didn't have screens on them, and the animals could come in and out and bugs could come in and out. So now that they were moving on up, like the Jeffersons, I guess, they were not going to have windows that you had to fuss with. So although now, you know, we want those things. And I think, you know, last time I mentioned about how they didn't pass on a lot of like farming knowledge or canning, because that's what they had to do to survive. It was not fashion, you know, it wasn't, oh, that's so neat that you learned to do that. That's what they had to do to survive. So once they had the opportunity to move away from that, they did. And so I guess that's, you know, part of the reason why that they didn't have any interest in passing that stuff on, because they thought, no, we're not going back there. So it's just all about perspective, isn't it? So those are my acquisitions for this week. So let's come back and talk a little bit about science. Okay, guys, as far as my professorness life goes, my science life goes, we finished our planetarium shows last week, and this week is the third and final week of my intersession online class, but then I have a 5-week summer term of the same class starting up next week. So I've got to do some grading, and I've got to get that class ready to go. But I'm enjoying not having to drive, you know, do a 2-hour commute every day. I'm enjoying teaching online right now, so I'm grateful for that. I do have a few sort of one-off things. I'm going to do a planetarium show in June for our local 4-H group, and then I'm going to speak to a summer science GT camp down in Little Rock, which is about an hour drive or so, hour and 15-minute drive. I had spoken to this group of kids last year, and the teacher approached me and asked me if I would come back again this year. So I always like getting asked back. That tells me I did a good job or that they enjoyed me, so that makes me happy. I wanted to talk a little bit about weather with you today. It seems like, you know, I saw on a couple of the British podcasts, they say, you know, you're British when you talk about the weather. But I wanted to talk a little bit about afternoon heating thunderstorms and how they form. We've been having some fairly consistently. We're in what they call a summertime weather pattern. Living in Arkansas where we get a lot of southerly flow, which means we get a lot of southerly winds off of the Gulf of Mexico, which means we are incredibly humid here during the summer. And I mean incredibly humid. We can have heat indexes that run into the 100 teens, you know, 110, 112 heat index in the summer is not unheard of. Even like today, you know, the temperature might be 89 or 90, but the heat index makes it feel like it's 98 or 99 or 100. Because what the heat index is, it takes into account the temperature plus the relative humidity. And if it's very humid outside, it's very hard for you to sweat and cool off, or you can sweat, but it's very hard for that sweat to evaporate, and the evaporating is what cools you off. So that's why they'll issue heat advisory warnings and stuff like that. And plus, we also take that into account with our animals and our horses or rabbits or whatever. You know, one thing that I've started working on doing is getting all my fans together for my rabbits, because they don't tolerate heat very well. So I will keep ice bottles in the refrigerator for them and put those out every day. And then I also will start putting fans on them every day and letting the fans just blow on them. Also, when we ride horses, you know, if the humidity's too high, they can't cool off by sweating, so pushing them too hard can actually cause them to overheat. It can be dangerous for their health. But what this does with the humidity in the afternoon is you can sort of set your clock by it. And it happened today, although we didn't get one here. You know, you'll wake up in the morning and the sky will be clear. And everybody knows warm air rises, right? So as the warm air rises, it cools, and cool air cannot hold the same amount of moisture that warm air can hold. So what ends up happening is the cool air, the moisture in the cool air will condense and form clouds. And as that pattern continues over the course of the afternoon, as things heat up, that rising air forms these thunderclouds. They form, you'll see them start out as the happy little puffy cumulus clouds, and then, you know, starting around lunchtime or 11 o'clock or so, and then by 2 o'clock they're starting to look a little more dark and angry, and they're starting to sort of, as my dad would say, bump together. And you can sit and watch an entire cumulonimbus thunderstorm form in front of you. Okay, these are called air mass thunderstorms or convective thunderstorms, or sometimes summer thunderstorms, because they form from the heating during the day. They form because the air gets warm, the storm will grow, it'll reach maturity, it'll rain itself, it'll rain. What ends up happening is, if you watch that storm, you'll see a rain shaft form out of the bottom of it where the rain is falling down, and that creates a downdraft, and eventually that's what's going to kill the storm, because the downdrafts where the rain forms chokes off the updrafts, which is what's feeding the storm energy, and eventually the storm just literally rains itself out. And they don't usually move around very much. They'll usually sit in one spot and rain out, and that's one of those things where it can be raining across the road from your house or not at your house, or raining down the road from your house but not at your house. But what they do is they can trigger formations of other storms, because as that downdraft happens, it pushes more air up and you get this circulation effect. So as long as the sun's out and it can drive this rising air, you'll have these storms form. So what you'll see is these storms will form, and they can be, you know, they can have lightning and wind, and even can spawn little weak tornadoes. But they'll form until the sun goes down, and then they quit. All right, and this happens, that's why in the summertime we generally have a 20% chance of rain, because those storms are going to form. It's just, where are they going to form, and are they going to form over you and rain on you? Well, probably not, but they could, because they're what they also call scattered thunderstorms. But what can happen is, in the summertime, we can get very unstable air, and we spent last week having an area of instability over the top of us, where storms were forming off of this low pressure system, and they were persisting into the evenings. They were a little bit different than these summertime thunderstorms, and they were forming due to this unstable low pressure system that was off to the east. Now, what can happen when you have a very unstable air system is something called a derecho, and derechos are very powerful and fast-moving thunderstorms that have strong straight-line winds in them. They don't generally cause tornadoes, although they can cause the formation of something called a gust-nado, which is a lot like a thunder, or a lot like a whirlwind. But these derechos can have hurricane-force winds in them, and they can be very, very damaging. So we have had derechos here, and one day in particular that I wanted to talk about was June 12th, 2009, because that's going to kind of lead into the farming talk. On June 12th, 2009, I was teaching on campus that day, and they had said, you know, we might have some thunderstorms. Well, I was looking at the radar as I was leaving campus, and I noticed this bow echo, which looks like a backward C, or sometimes called a bow echo, but like the bow wave off of a boat. It's this backward C-shaped echo coming off this thunderstorm. And I thought, uh-oh. So I get home and I'm watching this thing form. Now, derechos have to persist over a large distance to be classified as a derecho, not just a strong thunderstorm. And I had watched this one form up in the northwest part of the state, and it was pushing our direction. And so at the time, I had 4 mares with small babies. I had Gusty, Flame, and Chips were my show horses, and I had them home. So I went out and put those 3 in the barn, because I had kept them up in the barn lot. And then I had 4 mamas and babies, plus my older gelding, plus my yearling, Sky, was over behind the house. And then on the other side were all my young mares, Angel, who was pregnant with Bo at the time, and my 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds were all over on the other side, the way my field was subdivided. So the storm comes, and huge windstorm. I mean, big trees looked like they were just bowing over to the ground. I mean, it was terrifying. And I the storm blew through, and I went to my bedroom, and I looked out my window, and I'm like, oh, my neighbors. I'm like, how can I see my neighbor's house? Well, a very small gustnado had formed and had ripped a tree up out of the ground that had normally blocked my view of the neighbor's house. And I was like, the path it was on was headed toward the barn, and I got really freaked out and worried, so I was pulling my boots on. Now, one of the things that all thunderstorms can do, when they create lightning, it's basically a giant static spark, just like when you scuff your feet on the carpet in the wintertime and then you touch the door handle and it shocks you. That sort of scenario sort of plays out in that cloud where ice crystals are rubbing past each other and causing that cloud to charge up, which then causes the ground to act like it's charged. And lightning is simply where there'll be charges leaking down from the cloud called a stepped leader, and there'll be charges leaking up from the ground called a positive streamer, and where those two connect is where the lightning strikes. Now, there are lots of positive streamers that can come off the ground. They can, and it doesn't, you know, people say, oh, don't get under a tree, don't get by this. You know, they can come off of everything. If you're ever outside and your hair is standing on end, you need to lay down flat on the ground, because if your hair is standing out, that means there's a positive streamer coming off of you and you are a potential candidate for a lightning strike. Okay, but wherever those connect is where the lightning will hit. Now, most people don't realize this, but there's also a part of the storm very high up at the top that becomes charged that can strike far out from the base of the cloud. This is what very often causes a danger for farmers or people who are out on boats or people who are out playing golf or outdoors at sporting venues, because they think, oh, that storm's not here yet, I'm not in any danger. Lightning can strike up to 10 miles away from the base of the storm. Okay, from these positive, what's called a positive strike from the upper part of this cloud. It can strike up to 10 miles away from the base. If you can hear thunder, you are in danger. Okay, this is my rule of thumb. Even if it's very low, if you can hear it, that lightning is within striking distance. So what happened was, you know, and I talk about this in my classes. Well, what happened, I was pulling my boots on and looking out the back window, or my bedroom window, and I saw lightning strike in our field. And it split. It hit in two places. Now, the thing, when lightning strikes that close, you don't hear the thunder, because the thunder is supersonic. Okay, because the compression wave that creates the thunder, because when lightning strikes, what creates the thunder is that heated air, because that flow of charge heats the air up dramatically, and that's what you see is the lightning strike, and it causes that air to expand rapidly. Well, that's what creates the thunder, is this compression of air that happens. Well, if you're close to a lightning strike, you won't hear the thunder because it will be supersonic until it gets beyond you, and then you'll hear it rumble beyond you. Kind of sounds like a flash bulb, like an old-fashioned flash bulb that goes pop, and then you can smell ozone and stuff. So I go running up to the barn, and my horses in the barn are okay, and the mamas and babies and Patriot and Sky come running up, and then on the other side, Angel and Sterling come, but nobody else. And I had 7 young mares over there. I had 2 2-year-olds, Honey and Summer, who I had raised. I had 2 3/4 sisters, Boo and Cookie, who I had bought. They were little paint mares. And then I had 3 4-year-olds, Birdie, Pride, and Lily, okay, that were over there. I had just gotten them through training, all right. They were the same age as Chips and Flame, okay. And they were all over on that side, and they didn't come. And then I got to looking at Angel, and Angel was all muddy on one side, and on the other side, her skin was bright pink and her eye was like blood red, bloodshot. And then I got to looking at Sterling, and his knees were dirty, where he had gone down on his front end. And I knew what had happened. So I go running up to the pasture where these young mares were at, and they were all dead. Lightning had killed them. That lightning strike had hit a tree that they were standing under and killed them instantly. They had just fallen where they had laid or stood. you know, Angel and Sterling were either far enough away or they were standing in a different orientation where they were not cutting across a voltage surface. And it didn't kill them, but the compression knocked them down. And they were dead. And I lost it. I'm not gonna lie. I felt something inside me break. And I laid on the ground and screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed and wailed and cried. And I finally made it back down to the house. And the neighbors had come down to see what was going on. And they mistakenly said to me, oh, it was just the horses. And I know they didn't mean it like that, but they were worried that something had happened to my parents. And, yeah, that was a bad deal. So, I get a little anxious now when we have lightning. That is also how I got to be very good friends with Miss Marianne. A couple of years later, she lost 2 of her very good lesson horses to lightning. And that is how I came to be involved in her program, by donating horses to her program to replace the ones that she had lost. Now, the comfort is they did not suffer. They died instantly. Oh, here we go with the Hallelujah chorus. Okay, now that the Hallelujah chorus is over, as I was saying, they didn't suffer. They died instantly. And I guess, some of those little mares had been for sale, and I was very concerned about where they were going to go, because my little gray mare, Pride, she was not ever going to be an easy horse to place. She had been mistreated in her earlier days. I had the opportunity. I had tried to buy her when she was a baby, and some other people had bought her, and then I ended up having the opportunity to get her from them, and they made her very afraid of people. And although I had gotten her through a lot of that, my trainer had said she's never going to be one you can completely trust, so you're going to have to be really careful where she goes. And I was kind of worried about that. And, Cookie and Boo had been together their entire lives, and I was worried about that. And I had kind of said to myself, I hope they go to a great home. I hope they end up in a great home. And my mom pointed out to me, after I buried them all, they did. They ended their lives in the best possible home they could be in. So I took a little comfort in that. I was really terrified that Angel had lost the pregnancy when she was pregnant with Bo at the time, and took her and had her ultrasounded again, and she was fine. And he, of course, was born, a few months later, and he was perfectly fine. But you have to be weather aware. When you are outside, you have to be weather aware. And we talked about this a few times ago about the people driving into the tornado. I love to watch storms. I love the beauty of nature, and even storms that are scary and stuff. I love to watch them, but you have to be weather aware. You have to be aware to be able to stay safe. And so take that to account. If you can hear thunder, you are in danger. Do not be outside with a golf club, or outside on a tractor or a boat. You need to try to make your way to safety. But, these little mares were not standing under a single tree. They were not, under the tallest tree. They were in a line of trees, at the edge of an old fence row, and it was just, that was the one that it happened to connect with, unfortunately. So anyway, but it is beautiful to watch these storms go through their life cycle. To me, I love to see physics in action, I guess. And so, yeah, so take some time if you get a chance to go outside and watch an air mass thunderstorm form and go through its life cycle. So that's all of our science for today. So now we're going to come back and talk about farm stuff. Okay, farm life. First thing I'm going to say is I heard from my senior pen pal. Yay, 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 yay. Miss Glenda sent me a letter. She had been in the hospital for a little bit and had taken some time for her to recover. I guess she had gotten sick. So I heard from my senior pen pal, so I've got to get her a letter off in the mail tomorrow. We didn't have mail service today because today's a federal holiday here in the United States for Memorial Day. But I did hear from Miss Glenda, so I'm very, very relieved about that. Now, I did notice too that we're starting to see, definitely it's summertime. You know, the heat and the humidity is one thing, and the afternoon thunderstorms. We're also starting to see fireflies or lightning bugs, whatever you want to call them. We're starting to see those coming around in the evenings. And, you know, we're starting to see, we've transitioned from the spring wildflowers to more of a summer green pattern. You know, the blackberries have finished blooming. The honeysuckle is almost finished now. But I was starting to notice over in the pasture the thistle. I've got some wild thistle that's coming on now, which, you know, most people think that's a weed. And, you know, it is a weed, I guess, in a pasture if you want your pasture to look like a golf course. But I don't. So I let it bloom because the birds eat it, and I enjoy that. Starting to see some baby deer moving and some baby turkeys, and the baby Canadian or Canada geese. They're not Canadian geese, they're Canada geese. Canadian geese would be any goose from Canada. But Canada geese, starting to see some baby Canada geese, so that's kind of nice. What we've been working on today, Jacob came, and he had come on Friday, and we started putting up the new rabbit hutches, and then we went and got the horses to get ready for the horse show, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then he came back today, and we had a big job today. I have decided that we were going to clean my barn out. Really? Is it that boring? I'm so sorry. The barn I had kind of let go, and for various reasons. I built this beautiful barn with my own 2 hands. My dad helped me, and I had some neighbors come and help me too, but a lot of the work I did myself. And when my folks started getting bad, I kind of let it go. And that was in 2012, and I kind of let it go. And then after my dad passed away, I started fostering dogs, which I'm glad that I did that, but I was using my barn stalls as a way to keep the dogs. And there was never an end to how many dogs I was taking on. And they tore some things up, and they chewed on the wood, and they made some messes, and they chewed on my stall mats. And that kind of got me depressed. And then my mom died, and that kind of compounded it. I tried to have goats for a little while. I had a small herd of Angora goats, and I used the barn to keep the does up when they were getting close to having babies. I had some bottle calves that I raised that I kept in there. And my mom used to get really mad at my dad for saying he wouldn't do anything, he would just go to bed. And I think that was his way of dealing with his depression. And I kind of did the same thing with my barn. I just shut the doors and I didn't go up there. So consequently, the stalls were a mess. Things were dusty. You know, I've got some rust on some of my metal on my carts and stuff that I need to work on. My tack room's a mess. And I finally decided it's time to clean it up. It's time to clean it up. It's time to reclaim that thing that gave me so much joy. So we started working on it. We stripped all the stalls today, which was a big job. We stripped all the stalls out. And I've still got some sweeping to do, but we got all the old, gross, matted down bedding out of all the stalls, because I had just shut some of them up and had just been using the one double stall for Trixie and Angel after she was born. Hadn't even touched these other stalls. Got a lot of the trash hauled off. Got a kind of a plan in place for how to proceed next. I need to repaint my metal trim. I've got to go up there and clean up my tack room and get everything organized. We did that today, and y'all, I'm tired. That wore me out because it was hot up there, and you know, that's a lot of shoveling and lifting and pitchforks and all that. And I'm not gonna lie, I came to the house, I took me a hot shower, and I laid down for a few minutes. And my hair is kind of wild woman looking right now because I just let it dry on its own, which that's fine. But I kind of got motivated after going to the horse show this weekend. On Saturday, I took Gusty, Flame, and Bo, and my young friend Eleanor, who rides Flame quite a bit. We had planned on going to the Long Branch Stables horse show. Now, I used to horse show a lot. I used to haul all over the state and horse show. and I enjoyed it. I loved doing it, but once I got, I kind of let myself get down and depressed after my folks got bad. My last horse show that I really went to was the Sunday before we put my dad into hospice. And I wasn't going to go, and my mom said, yes, you are. He would want you to go. You go show your horses. And I went and came home and threw everything in my trailer and locked it and just kind of walked away from it. Because after my father passed away, I didn't feel like I could really leave. My mom got very sad, obviously, and I didn't really feel like I could go off and leave her. And so I just left it. And after she passed away, dealing with kind of all of that, then I met Marianne, and she kind of helped me get back into horses. And I haven't really had the opportunity until this year to take my own horses and go do. Because I've wanted to help her out, and I am glad that I'm helping her, but it's time for me to do for myself a little bit. So this weekend we didn't have anything scheduled at the barn, and Shannon's show was the very first show series where I rode Gusty. 11 years ago, I rode Gusty for the very first time in a show at Shannon's. And she had kind of quit doing them, too. Her son was getting older, and she's wanting to do some stuff with him, and her and her husband both had some health issues. Well, now they're back on track, and she decided to do show series again, so I was like, I'm going to this. So we went and got the horses on Friday and loaded everything up. I got up early Saturday morning. I didn't sleep very good Friday night because, I was just anxious, I guess. I just didn't sleep well. Got up very early Saturday morning, loaded them up, and I was real proud of Bo. He didn't really give me any hard time about loading. He's never been anywhere. This is the first time he has been off the farm other than to go to Marianne's. And so this is going to be his first trip to town. So got up very early. I met Eleanor and her mother at the grocery store parking lot a little bit after 6 o'clock in the morning, and we drove down and got there at about 7:20. And I was so glad that we went. It was like coming home for me because I saw a lot of people that I knew. Miss Pat was there, Shannon was there, Mare and her husband was there. There were just a lot of people there. Nikki was there. These are people that I've known from horse showing since I first started, and I have not seen them in forever. Miss Pat was there with her young horse. Now, Miss Pat's a real class act. She's ridden horses her entire life. She grew up out in California. She used to ride horses in the Rose Bowl parade. She rides Arabians almost exclusively, and she's starting this young horse herself, and she's in her 70s. I mean, she is something else. She is someone I aspire to be like, as Miss Pat. But she was there, and so we went in and we showed. We showed in halter, and I mostly wanted to do that for Bo so he could just see the world. And then we rode in the English classes. And the judge was actually a former student of mine, Mindy. She was the judge. And Bo was very, very good. We didn't place very high because he's not in very good shape right now, just because, riding a horse every day puts him in really good muscular condition, and he just doesn't get ridden every day or ridden at all, really. But that's going to change. And but he did very well. He was very well behaved. He stood at the trailer mostly quietly. Now, when I did have the girls, both of the girls were gone into the arena for the riding classes, I actually put him in the trailer. But as long as he could see other horses, he seemed to be pretty happy. So I was really proud that we went. Denise came out, like I had mentioned already. Came out and kind of supported us, and everybody was sitting there. Well, we rode in walk trot and then in walk trot canter, and when they called us as the winner of our first class, I started crying. I started crying because I love my horse so much. Gusty means the world to me, and she is getting older. She's 15 now, and I know that there's going to come a time when we're not going to be able to do this anymore. Hopefully not for a long time. But for us to go back and to win. Now, we didn't win in the walk trot canter class because of operator error. And the other thing is she was getting a little bit tired. That's one thing that we've got to work on, is some stamina, because at the barn program that I ride at, there's just not this long stretch of lots and lots of hard riding, and and I was tired. You know, she's in better shape. Gustie's in better shape than I am. You know, it was operator error. I cued her incorrectly, and we picked up the wrong lead on the canter, and I didn't fix it. So that cost us the first place in our walk trot canter class, but we'll get them next time. Eleanor did very well. You know, she placed him. We had some issues with Flame and her canter too, so we know what you need to work on. And that's kind of how I use horse showing, is I use it as a thing to kind of check where I'm at and what I need to be working on. But I was so proud of my horses. I was so proud that I went. It has reignited that fire in me, and we're going to have to find a way to make this work, because I am going to show my horses. I am determined now more than ever to show my horses. And also I am determined to get Bo going more than ever. So we've got the summer, and then at the end of the summer I've contacted the vet that the barn uses. She has a trainer that she uses, and I'm probably going to end up sending him to the trainer just to get some consistent riding on him, because I'm tired of waiting. He's 8. I'm ready for him to be ready, and I'm ready for him to shine. He is a beautiful horse, and everyone, he's very eye-catching, and he is a beautiful mover. I don't know if you had a chance to watch my 2 shorty videos, but I posted a video of the night I brought them home and let them out, and they were running up and down the fence and bucking and you know, farting and snorting and showing out for each other. He is a beautiful mover. All my horses are beautiful, and I'm ready for him to be ready. So yeah, so I kind of got a plan in place there. But anyway, so that's kind of where we're at right now on the farm. I have made a couple more batches of jelly that I'll share with you. So this is some strawberry mint jelly that I made with my own strawberry plants, or my own strawberries, and then my own mint plants. Okay, so I infused the mint like I was making tea, and then I took the strawberries and put in the mint tea and let it cook down and made my jelly syrup out of it. Okay, so that is my strawberry mint jelly. And then I made, my elderflowers are blooming, so I made elderflower lavender vanilla jelly. And this is not set up yet, so I think I'm going to have to recook this. And I put 2 things of pectin in it, but it didn't set up. But I took the flowers off the elderflower bush and made a tea out of those, and put some lavender flowers in there, and then added some of my homemade vanilla that I talked about on my very first episode, and made a simple syrup and made my jelly out of it. It makes a beautiful yellow jelly. So that's the 2 jellies that I've made. So it, you know, canning season is definitely going to start ramping up as the produce starts coming in. I haven't been up to our local farmers market yet. I'm going to try to go probably this weekend, because we should be getting into plums, and probably there's still some strawberries coming on, and blueberries ought to be coming, because I noticed my blueberries are starting to get close to being ripe out in the garden. Garden is doing well. Everything seems to be cooking right along. The birds are all doing well. The rabbits will be happy with their new cages, I think, when I get some of them moved around. So everything here at the farm is just clicking along in our summertime pattern, just like the weather. You know, the main thing is we're trying to be smart about working outside. You know, you got to stay hydrated. I kind of got on to Jacob today because he wasn't drinking as much. You know, I carry one of these big mugs around with me full of ice water all the time. He drank like this much water while we were there. I'm like, you need to drink more water. So, you know, staying hydrated is a big deal for me, and so I carry one of these around with me pretty much constantly. So, but anyway, so that's kind of farm life. So we'll come back and finish up with a few thoughts. Okay guys, if you didn't get a chance to watch my shorty videos from the horse show and from the horses out romping around, I really encourage you to watch those. Also too, if you get a chance, share the podcast, and also like the videos and comment on them even too. I love to hear from people, and it also helps me to get to be a little bit higher profile, I think. I don't know how all that stuff works, but I mean, I think that I'm reasonably entertaining. I don't know if I'm as entertaining as some people, but you know, I mean, I realize I'm not a pattern writer and all that stuff, and nor am I a yarn dyer, but hopefully you're finding something entertaining to watch each week as I come down here and talk to you about stuff. So the last thing that I wanted to finish up with is today in the United States is Memorial Day. And Memorial Day, although it seems like it's turned into a day for people to go out on their boats and to have barbecues and for the stores to have sales, that's not what it's about. It's about a day of remembrance for those who have lost their lives in war or in conflict. And, you know, that, and every country has, I'm sure, something similar. So it's a day for us to sort of pause and remember that. So I purposely do not partake in Memorial Day sales or boat rides or whatever, because I think that we need to remember this, you know, remember these individuals. And not all of these individuals were human. There were many animals who were also part of the military and a part of conflict around the world. And, you know, obviously most people, when you think of that, they think of military dogs. Certainly military dogs, horses, you know, even mules and donkeys were also a part of the armed forces, as well as pigeons, carrier pigeons, camels. You know, for several years, you know, there were certain military groups who used camels. There were many animals that you might not expect that were drawn into service over the years. And very often after the conflict was over, there was no plan for what would happen to these animals. And that was unfortunate, because sometimes what that meant is they were either abandoned or they were killed. And that's a shame. Hopefully, you know, now I know things have changed, but there were many, many animals who have also protected our freedoms and who have been involved in military service around the world. So let's also remember those of fur and feather that helped serve as well. Yeah, so that was sort of my final thoughts. I hope that you are doing well. I hope that where you are enjoying whatever weather you're experiencing. I hope that you're meeting your crafting goals. And if you're not, just keep on keeping on. That's all we can do. So until I talk to y'all again, be good to each other. Take care of each other. And you gonna tell them peace out, Willie? Peace out. Bye.